now that we've passed over on this professional standard of care when it comes to torts, we started talking about the rule of law. And the rule of law is the second thing of several ways that the court has tried to determine whether or not the conduct of an actor is reasonable. And we'll get into that a bit more later in this episode, because rule of law is actually quite simple and quite straightforward. But we have Pecora v. Wabash Ryco, which is a railroad crossing kind of case where a person was supposed to get out of their car, look both ways. If they couldn't determine that a train was coming, get back into their car and continue on. And this was based off of a case that had happened in Goodman. What happened here is that the Supreme Court had looked at that case, established that rule, kind of more as a suggestion, and then the other courts took that as a rule of law, and they said, for clarity's sake, we're going to interpret this as a hard, fast, set, no exceptions kind of rule of law. And so Pecora is a case that challenged that no exception kind of standard and it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, we never really intended Goodman to be like a hard, fast, straight rule of law, and so there's going to be some exceptions to this kind of case. But you can see how rules of law occur, and you can see how exceptions occur because, for example, it seems unreasonable for a person to get out of their vehicle when they may already be in a very dangerous situation to determine whether or not a train is coming. It's just not right. So that's rule of law. With that said, I want to just sum up the several ways that the courts have determined whether or not an actor's conduct is reasonable. Up to this point, before the rule of law that I just talked about, we have been doing a case-by-case analysis. We've been looking at the common law to see what it has said about what is reasonable. We've examined the burden, the risk-benefit analysis through learned hands, calculus of negligence and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, we've set out this kind of pattern to say what is reasonable. And so we can make this common law approach for what's reasonable. We can do the rule of law approach as adopted by the Supreme Court. And as you can see in Pecora, there's this duty by statute approach, which we're going to talk about, I don't know how soon. But really what that is just saying is that there's a duty plus a cause of action imposed by an existing statute, meaning the statute says that this is negligence, and if you violate that statute, it's going to be negligent. And then fourth, we're going to have an applied violation of statute as negligence per se. And that's what we're going to get into with this next episode, pretty much right next in the list. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Law Schoolers. Before I let you go, there are 4 things I want to say. The first thing is if you enjoyed these episodes and if you enjoyed the website, I would invite you to go and join Law Schoolers Pro. And you can do that by going to lawschoolers.com/join. It's a way for you to support us, but there's also a lot of features there that I think you will enjoy. Second thing is that nearly all of our episodes are unedited. The only ones that aren't are pre-law materials, and the reason for that is so you can actually see the legal material in its raw form as I'm learning it as well. The third thing is that the information contained in these episodes are specifically only for educational purposes. They're not to be used as legal advice, and with that, the fourth thing is if it is used as legal advice, we are not liable. That is, Law Schoolers is not liable for any legal outcomes. Thank you again for enjoying the show. Have a good one.